next question here. Let's talk about the guy on the other side of Myles Garrett. Obviously, he's a free agent today, Jadeveon Clowney. And there's two angles that I'm looking at this with. The first is there a Jadeveon Clowney model that the Browns are using? And we're going to talk about potentially signing Clowney to a longer contract. But what we've seen so far on that other edge is, that Andrew Berry inherited Olivier Vernon, but he was on the last year of his contract. He brings in Jadeveon Clowney on a one-year deal. They were looking at J.J. Watt, in a similar capacity. Should we expect the Browns to maybe take that approach on that other edge more regularly, where it's like, listen, we have a $125 million guy on the one side. We're not going to go pay Trey Hendrickson 4 years, 15 or 16 million a year, whatever he made, or Carl Lawson. We're not going to pay another edge rusher that type of money. Is there sort of a Jadeveon Clowney model developing here? Do you guys think this is going to be a trend?
Well, I think that they kind of caught lightning in a bottle a little bit with Jadeveon Clowney, because he was, it was later in the process. All of the top pass rushers were signed to multi-year contracts for the most part. And they really didn't want to go that high on that side, where, guys were getting, 15, 16, 17, $18 million a year in some cases. And they really did not want to do that. So they kind of got lucky, I would say, in terms of being able to get a Jadeveon Clowney coming off of a torn meniscus. He had a down season. He didn't play the second half of last season, and he needed to rebuild his career. I think it's going to be difficult to find a situation like that again, because even now he's going to cost a pretty penny. In order to re-sign Jadeveon Clowney coming off of 9 sacks, I'm seeing estimates of $15 million a year. So they're going to have to decide if they want to pay that in a year when we know for sure that they've got to add some wide receivers. They're going to start to have to pay Denzel and see what happens with Baker. So I don't know if they're going to want to pay a boatload of money.
Yeah, Scott, I guess where I'm going with this is like, are they going to take this approach to maybe it's Clowney this year, but I don't know what the market's going to be for Chandler Jones, who's older, had a really good year, but is he going to get a 5-year deal for $100 million, or is he going to get a 1-year deal for $12 million? And is that sort of where the Browns might shop here, unless something we'll get to a little later, unless they decide to address this in the draft.
Yeah, this is one of those positions where I'm still trying to figure out what Andrew Berry thinks about it, because obviously you put a lot of money into Myles Garrett, but edge rushers, they don't have the impact on wins and losses that so many, they're in the bottom 4 in that respect. But you also have that Browns guardrails laminate that kind of made the rounds a couple years ago after that Seth Wickersham story that had the priority positions, and it was quarterback, cornerback, and then edge, pass rushers. It was up there. So, Deep Podesta's name's at the top of that thing. So, yeah, I'm not sure where you end up on that. I know that there are a lot of similarities between the season Vernon had in 2020 and what Clowney did this past season. But I do not see them shelling out big bucks. I do think you're kind of playing with fire, though, if you keep trying to do the 1-year thing. Ideally, you draft somebody and you groom them and they become that person who can be opposite Myles Garrett for X number of years. But they're not there yet. They don't have that guy on the roster right now. So they kind of have to keep looking. And I think it's probably more likely that, Clowney prices himself out of what the Browns want to do.
Ashley, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, it's all about money because, right, we know we've talked about Jadeveon Clowney on this podcast before recently about he came at essentially half the price of some other edge guys that they were looking at last year. And he performed in a way that I don't think many people did. And obviously, even given his contract incentives, his sack incentives, he maxed out at that. And I don't, like I said, I myself was like, oh, well, the good thing about this when they signed him is it was kind of low risk because of the money and the fact that it was a 1-year deal. And I just think that there's so much at play here. There's so many different options they can go, whether it's like you said, Dan, like re-signing him for another year and kind of see what happens. That if he likes playing with Myles Garrett, they obviously play well together. And I know Myles, I think, talked about, and Jadeveon have talked about that they bring out a certain competitiveness in one another. But if there's another guy like that out there and you need to prioritize some other things, and Clowney, himself said it's not going to necessarily only come down to money, but when you're getting up there in age and you just had a season like he had, that's obviously going to be part of it, because you do want to be recognized for that with some kind of monetary value, right? So I do think it's tricky, and I know we're going to talk about the draft stuff later, but I definitely think, like Scott said, that's another viable option for them here.
What does the perfect Clowney contract look like if the Browns re-sign him? 1 year? Would you go as high as 12?
You know what I would do? I would go 1 year, 12 or 13 with these SAC incentives again that could get him up into that $15 million range, which some of it included, there was $500,000 bonus if they would have made the playoffs. And I'm sure there's also a Pro Bowl bonus. So I'd throw a bunch of those bonuses in, and I maybe would go 12, 13 and try to save a few pennies somewhere else, because it helped Myles so much to have Jadeveon over there too. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck.